Unit 1, Sushi 1, A, B, C, and D. English settlement in the New World. The settlement of permanent English colonies in North America, beginning with Jamestown in 1607, further cemented the development of an already emerging and complex Atlantic world. The convergence of North American, South American, European, and African peoples in the Western Hemisphere was a complicated mix of conquest, trade, and religious missions. Spanish, French, and English colonies existed simultaneously or at the same time in North America, each with different objectives and different approaches to the American Indians they encountered. So the gang is all here, the Spanish, the French, and the English colonies, all existing simultaneously. Mercantilism. Although many English colonists came to North America searching for religious or political opportunities, it was economic opportunity that fueled the ambition of other English colonists as well as their mother country. Investors sought financial returns for their colonial ventures. England sought or went after to extract resources from North America in order to compete with their European rivals for wealth and power. By 1650, England was heavily entrenched in transatlantic trade based on mercantilism. Mercantilism is an economic theory based on reducing a country's imports while expanding its exports in order to maximize wealth. In a highly competitive European world of the 16th and 17th centuries, wealth equals power. And something you need to understand is the British absolutely love mercantilism. America, what a resource. Mercantilism inspired European governments, including England, to promote American colonies as a source of raw materials, not readily available in the mother country. The mother country is England. Some of the most important resources England took from the colonies included lumber, sugar, wool, tobacco, rice, and indigo. These raw materials were then used in England to produce manufactured goods. And these manufactured goods would be sent back and sold to the colonists in North America. Favorable trade for Mama. A favorable trade balance resulted for England in the colonial arrangement. Raw materials that were scarce in England were acquired from their colonial possessions. Simultaneously, the colonies were a ready market for the manufactured products produced in England from the raw materials. The transatlantic trade network the transatlantic trade that resulted led to various colonial labor arrangements and restrictive policies to ensure England maximized its mercantilist potential, aka made the most money it possibly could. The Navigation Acts are going to further ensure that England is making money. Okay, the laws were designed to keep England's own colonies from competing with the mother country by mandating 3 fundamental criteria for transatlantic trade. All goods shipped to or from English North America had to travel on English ships. 2. Any goods imported to the colonies from Europe had to first be processed through an English port. And 3. Most colonial resources could only be exported to England. So English, England. The transatlantic trade flourished under the mercantilist system. English ships loaded with rum, cloth, and other manufactured goods sailed to Africa, where they were traded for Africans as part of the slave trade. So from 1. Then, the Middle Passage, the slaves were transported on a brutal voyage to the Americas, where they were sold as forced labor commodity to the colonial landholders. And then the third step of the journey. We're going to transport American raw materials to England, and then these raw materials are going to be made into manufactured goods, and the cycle would continue. The Southern Colonies. Geography plays a key role in the Southern Colonies, as that region is very rich with soil and a very long growing season. So the Southern Colonies are going to become very agricultural. India relations in the Southern Colonies. It's going to go from nice to not. So at first you see a very peaceful coexistence, That as more and more English colonists began to arrive and encroach or move into native lands, the relationship is going to become more violent. Virginia. The first permanent English colony in North America was founded in 1607 at Jamestown, Virginia. The establishment of Jamestown was a business venture of London's Virginia Company, a joint stock company, which raised capital for the expedition to America by selling shares of a company's stock to investors. Once financed by investors, the Virginia Company planned to send colonists to find gold and other valuable resources in America. The spoils would be sent back to England to pay off investors and make a handsome profit. The Virginia Company was granted a royal charter by King James I in 1606. Virginia is the king of the colonies. Jamestown struggling. Initially, the colonies suffered mightily. Disease, famine, and Indian attacks all hindered or prevented the Jamestown settlement from fulfilling the Virginia Company's vision for the colony. The colony was planted along the James River, which bred deadly disease such as malaria and dysentery. A lack of leadership also caused the colonists to be unprepared to sustain themselves through the first winter. Food and shelter had not been the priority for the wealth-seeking early colonists to Jamestown. This time period became known as the Starving Time. Cue the leadership. Captain John Smith is going to become the leader of Jamestown and ultimately save the colony. He has his famous order of "He that will not work will not eat." He's going to encourage the men to work, to farm, and to construct. He was not always popular, but he did bring in a brand new form of leadership which is going to help the settlement. Tobacco. Tobacco production was another development that helped to save the Jamestown colony and to make it more lucrative. Lucrative means money-making. John Rolfe, who later married the American Indian princess Pocahontas, arrived in Jamestown in 1610 from the Caribbean. He experimented with tobacco seeds to produce a crop that became very desirable in Europe. Having survived the starving time in Jamestown's early years and secured the financial importance of the colony with tobacco production, Virginia emerged as a critical component of England's mercantilist system. In other words, Virginia is making England a lot of money. Maryland. In 1632, King Charles I granted Lord Baltimore proprietary rights to the land in the Chesapeake Bay region to plant a colony. There was a reward for the noble's service to the king. The resulting colony of Maryland was settled initially as a safe haven for Catholics who were being persecuted by the Protestants. Because the Chesapeake Bay region was fertile ground for tobacco production, similar to land in neighboring Virginia, Maryland's Catholics quickly outnumbered their own colony. In an effort to preserve the rights of Catholics in Maryland, the Lord Baltimore quickly had the Act of Toleration passed. This colonial law is going to guarantee religious freedom in Maryland to all Christians, Protestants, and Catholics. The Carolinas, North and South. The Carolina colony was originally a single, or just one, colony located between Virginia and Spanish Florida. The land was given in 1663 to 8 nobles who had helped Charles II reclaim the monarchy from Oliver Cromwell in what's known as the Restoration. The 8 nobles who were given Carolina were referred to as Lord Proprietors of the vast colony. Later it would split into North and South. Georgia is the last English colony established in North America prior to the Revolutionary War. Founded in 1732, it was created for 2 purposes: a defensive buffer and a place to send debtors that were crowding London jails. General James Oglethorpe and 20 trustees were given the charter for Georgia, they regulated the colony, and its inhabitants with very strict rules: no slaves and no alcohol. The New England colonies. The Mayflower Compact. Before disembarking the Mayflower, the Pilgrims created and signed the Mayflower Compact. The document is important in the study of the early colonial period in that it was a pledge by the colonists to govern themselves through majority rule. You need to know this. The Massachusetts Bay Colony. A group of about 1,000 non-separatist Puritans were led by John Winthrop on their voyage to North America. They established the Massachusetts Bay Colony near present-day Boston. While crossing the Atlantic, Winthrop set the tone for the Puritan colonists in his famous Model of a Christian Charity speech, which is often referred to as a City Upon a Hill speech. In the City Upon a Hill speech, Winthrop is going to challenge the Puritans to work as hard as they possibly could to make a new colony and thrive, since the world would be watching to see if they were successful. Hard work would prove their devotion to God and be a symbol to the world, and any person that was not completely committed to the overall success of the colony would not be allowed to remain. Rhode Island was established by Roger Williams. He was a Puritan minister who had actually faced banishment from the Massachusetts Bay colonies when he was teaching that individuals had more control of their conscience. Once he was forced out of the colony, Williams left Boston with a few supporters and settled a new colony. That colony would become known as Rhode Island. Roger hit the road and developed Rhode Island. True religious tolerance was practiced in the colony. Colonists were allowed to practice any religion that they wanted to in Rhode Island. Connecticut. This is another individual that left the Puritans in Massachusetts Bay. Thomas Hooker, he was a Puritan minister who differed with the church over a colonist's individual participation in governing. Hooker and his followers established a new colony at Hartford, west of Rhode Island. Once Connecticut is established as a colony, they're going to draft America's first written constitution, also known as the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut. This document establishes a representative government led by a popularly elected legislature and a governor chosen by that legislature. New Hampshire. Originally a portion of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, the small settlement in the north eventually formed their own New Hampshire colony in 1679. This New Hampshire colony will be somewhat more religiously diverse than the stricter Puritan settlement of the Massachusetts Bay. Middle colonies. New York and New Amsterdam. King Charles II is going to give the recently acquired New Netherlands colony to his brother James, the Duke of York, as a proprietary colony in 1663. The colony and port were renamed New York in honor of the new proprietor. The original settlers from the previous Dutch colony were allowed to remain in residence, speak their own languages, and worship as they pleased. Thus, the cultural and religious diversity of New York was preserved. The colony continued to grow as a leading trade center and continues to be a leading trade center in the state of New York today. New Jersey. James, the Duke of York, who had received the New York colony from his brother, believed the colony was too large to administer. So, ultimately, he's going to give the land to two friends who are going to create New Jersey. Pennsylvania. Created by William Penn. Pennsylvania. William Penn. And land is going to be granted as a repayment of debt that the king owed his father. William Penn belonged to a religious group known as the Quakers. The Quakers, also known as the Religious Society of Friends, were persecuted in England for their beliefs. The basic ideology followed by Quakers is that everyone possesses an inner light and is capable of their own religious interpretation without the need for formal clergy. Women are fully awarded full participation in faith and are equals to men in the Quaker religion. They believe in religious toleration and fair treatment of the American Indians. His religion is going to spread, and Philadelphia is going to grow quickly into a vibrant port city that is going to engage in transatlantic trade of goods. And because of their religious and cultural tolerance practiced by Penn and the Quakers, Pennsylvania exemplifies the diversity for which the mid-Atlantic colonies are known for.